The world today is unsteady. Global events ricochet through the markets. Technology reshapes our routines faster than we can adapt. Political landscapes shift overnight. Institutions wobble. People are afraid. But within this instability, there is an invitation, not to panic, not to retreat, but to become unshakable, to become the calm within the storm. This is the realm of Stoicism. It does not promise a safe world. It teaches how to build a safe soul. It doesn't remove the storm. It trains you to walk through it, drenched but undeterred. The Stoics lived in dangerous, uncertain, and deeply chaotic times, and they didn't just endure, they flourished. We can too. The Stoic way is not about ignoring reality, it's about confronting it with eyes wide open and heart wide still. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Amor Fati, learning to love what happens. In nature, certain seeds require fire to sprout. The lodgepole pine, for example, cannot release its seeds without the heat of a raging forest fire. What destroys others awakens it. The cone holds its future inside a thick resin, which must be melted away before life can begin. Change and disruption often feel like fire. They scorch the familiar. They consume the routines we depend on, the plans we carefully constructed, the identities we wrapped around our circumstances. It can feel like loss, like chaos, like the end of stability. But the Stoics looked at this same fire and saw a paradoxical gift. They saw something sacred in its destruction. They saw a purification, a transformation. They called it amor fati, the love of fate. To love fate does not mean to desire tragedy. It does not mean to deny pain. It means to meet life as it is, not as we wish it to be, and to affirm it, not in spite of its difficulty, but because we recognize what it makes possible in us. Amor fati is not passive acceptance. It is radical collaboration with reality. It is choosing to lean into the fire, not away from it. It is to say, this, too, serves my development. Marcus Aurelius, facing relentless war, betrayal, illness, and personal grief, still found the strength to write. A blazing fire makes flame and brightness out of everything that is thrown into it. The fire does not turn away fuel. It doesn't complain. It integrates. It uses. It transforms. This is not metaphor. It is a manual for how to face adversity. The Stoic, like the fire, takes in the chaos and emits clarity. They take the heartbreak and turn it into wisdom. They turn injury into insight and disruption into discipline. You didn't choose the layoffs. You didn't ask for the betrayal. You didn't want the illness, the accident, the uncertainty. But here you are, and the Stoics would remind you, that's all that matters. What is, is. The question now is not why this happened. The question is, what will you make of it? What version of yourself will rise from this? Will you let this trial weaken you, or will it become the forge that hardens your character into something stronger, wiser, and more composed than before? Pain visits all of us. Crisis knocks on every door eventually. Suffering is not a special curse, it is a universal feature of life. The Stoics knew this intimately. What mattered to them was not avoidance, but response, not evasion, but elevation. What matters, they insisted, is whether we stand back up, not bitter, but brave. Whether we meet difficulty not with complaint, but with calm. They believed that challenges are not interruptions of life, but integral to its unfolding. That the very thing you thought might break you could be the one thing that builds your integrity, your self-reliance, your depth. These are not roadblocks. These are reinforcements. You don't control the fire, but you do control how you stand within it, how you let it shape you, and what you choose to carry out from it. Don't just survive what happens to you, digest it. Let it change you deliberately, not by accident. Don't run from it. Study it. Interrogate it. Let it teach you where your boundaries lie and where they need to be reinforced. Let it show you the gaps in your thinking, the cracks in your character, the areas still under construction. Let it humble you by stripping away illusions, the vanity and entitlement that cannot survive real heat. Let it strengthen you by forcing you to grow into someone more stable, more deliberate, more self-commanding. That is the Stoic path. Life is not meant to be navigated unburned. It is meant to be navigated unbroken, with clear eyes, a steady heart, and a soul that understands that every hardship contains a seed of instruction. The Stoics didn't teach that adversity is good. They taught that how we respond to adversity determines its goodness. They refused to be passive recipients of fate. They became active interpreters of meaning. What breaks others becomes the material you use to build your inner temple. The trials of life are not punishments. They are provocations, calls to virtue, invitations to courage, and tests of sincerity. This isn't motivational fluff or romanticized suffering. It is the rigorous clarity of Stoic philosophy. It is the spiritual preparation for life as it is, not life as we wish it to be. And it begins with a fundamental shift. Stop seeing reality as an opponent and start recognizing it as your trainer, your teacher, your relentless but necessary ally. Fate is not your enemy. It's your curriculum. It's the custom-built course designed to stretch you into your highest potential, not in spite of the heat, but because of it. Take one event in your life that you've long considered unfortunate. Sit with it deeply, without judgment, and allow yourself to see it from multiple angles. Write down 3 ways it has shaped your mindset. Consider how it shifted your beliefs, changed your reactions, or sharpened your focus. Reflect also on how it may have improved your boundaries. Did it teach you where to say no, where to stop giving too much, or how to protect your energy? Think about how it deepened your empathy. Did it help you relate to others who struggle, or make you less quick to judge? Then take it further. Ask yourself not only whether you would be the same person without that fire, but whether you would understand yourself as clearly. Would your values be as hard-won? Would your strength be as deliberate? Would your calm be as anchored? Consider how the event might have stripped away illusions or shown you what really matters. Finally, finish your reflection by writing down one virtue, courage, patience, wisdom, discipline, resilience, that this experience cultivated in you. Acknowledge it, honor it, own it. This is how the Stoic reclaims the past, not by erasing the pain, but by uncovering its hidden yield. Chapter 2. Zeno's Shipwreck, Making Fortune Out of Loss. Zeno, the founder of Stoicism, did not come to philosophy by calm study. He came by way of disaster. A shipwreck ruined him. He was a merchant dealing in rare dyes, transporting valuable goods from port to port across the Mediterranean. One day, without warning, the sea took everything: his cargo, his wealth, his livelihood, his vision of the future. All of it swallowed by waves. He washed ashore in Athens, penniless, disoriented, stripped of the life he thought he was building. What appeared at first as misfortune, the loss of his entire fortune, became the moment that set his true purpose in motion. Wandering the bustling Athenian marketplace, he heard a voice. A bookseller was reading aloud from the dialogues of Socrates. Something in those words stirred Zeno. The wisdom, the clarity, the challenge. It reached into the hollow space left by loss and began to rebuild him. He followed that trail of insight like a thread through a maze. He studied under the great cynic Crates, then with the Megarians and others. He did not quit at hardship. He was being transformed. Years later, he would found a new school of philosophy, Stoicism, right there in the Athenian agora, on the painted porch known as the Stoa Poikile. Zeno later said, I made a prosperous voyage when I suffered shipwreck. There it is, the Stoic twist, the tragedy that set the path, the loss that was not the end, but the origin. Life took from Zeno his business, his comfort, his direction, but in return, it gave him philosophy, not just for himself, but for the centuries. His personal catastrophe planted the seed of a global school of wisdom that would still be speaking to us millennia later. What seemed like a personal collapse was, in fact, the beginning of a universal legacy. This is the Stoic pattern. The worst day becomes the first day. The shipwreck is not a failure, it is a fork in the road. Zeno didn't just recover from the wreck, he reinvented himself within it. He didn't simply survive loss, he let it redirect him towards something more permanent. His voyage, derailed by fate, ended up arriving exactly where he was meant to be, not as a merchant, but as a philosopher, a teacher, a founder of a way of life that would endure beyond empires. And so we must ask the same of ourselves. What in our life was a loss that turned into a gift? What storm stripped us of something we thought we couldn't live without? And what did that clearing make room for? What shipwreck set us on a better course? Not because the pain was noble or the suffering romantic, but because we were changed by it in ways that safety never could. Who did we meet because of what we lost? What did we learn that we couldn't have learned while everything was going according to plan? What inner strength, what creative spark, what moral courage did we discover that lay dormant until we had to call on it? The Stoic does not sugarcoat suffering, but they do not leave it wasted. They know that hardship is raw material, unrefined but essential. It is the stone the sculptor must strike. It is the steel that must pass through flame. They do not wish it away. They work with it. They turn misfortune into something functional, like a craftsman turning flawed timber into elegant furniture. They look at broken plans, not with regret, but with curiosity. What can be shaped from this? They transform setback into school, making each difficulty a curriculum for character. Every loss becomes a chance to build resilience. Every insult, an invitation to patience. They alchemize hardship into insight, pulling clarity from chaos, pulling growth from grief. They do not curse the shipwreck. They climb onto the wreckage and study its pieces. They mine the disaster for doctrine. They turn pain into pages of philosophy. Pain wakes us. It shakes us free from delusion. It reveals the architecture of our assumptions. It humbles us before the truth that control is mostly illusion. It strips away the layers of ego we didn't know we were clinging to. Often, the identity we were so fiercely attached to, the job title, the relationship, the life plan, had to die so something more honest, more grounded, more enduring could emerge. The Stoic sees this not as a cruel punishment, but as a necessary correction. Life isn't destroying us, it's sculpting us. The old self, brittle and borrowed, had to burn away so that a more authentic self could rise from the ash. That's not toxic positivity, that's wisdom born of fire. So here's the quiet truth. The moments that shape us most deeply are not when everything goes right, but when everything goes wrong and we decide to stay standing anyway. These moments are often marked not by clarity, but by confusion. Not by strength, but by surrender. And yet, in the process of simply enduring, of not giving up, something begins to take shape within us. Our deepest insights are not born in triumph, but in turmoil. Not when we are ascending the mountain, but when we are crawling from the ruins, piecing together the parts of ourselves that matter most. We discover what is essential by losing what is not. If Zeno had never lost his ship, we might never have gained Stoicism. If Marcus Aurelius had not faced war and plague and betrayal, we might never have received Meditations. If Epictetus had not been born into slavery, we might never have heard his voice urging us toward discipline and clarity. And if you had not faced your personal shipwreck, who knows what part of you would still be asleep, untested, unsharpened, unknown. Our pain often serves as the chisel that reveals the sculpture within. We are not defined by what we avoid. We are defined by how we respond. Growth does not require ease. It requires presence. It demands that we face what is hard and learn what it came to teach. The Stoic does not just endure fire. They walk through it with awareness. They let it strip them of pretense, of illusion, of attachment to the temporary. They emerge with fewer layers, but greater depth. They do not pretend the fire didn't hurt, but they do insist that the pain had purpose, and what remains is not ruined. It is refined. It is something closer to the core. Reflect on a major setback. Write a journal entry titled, "What That Storm Gave Me." Include what was lost, but dwell longer on what was revealed. What habits died? What values were born? What illusions did it burn away? What new understanding rose in its place? Name the lessons, name the virtue, name the transformation, and remind yourself, shipwrecks hurt, but they also reveal the compass you never knew you had. And often, they point to a destination that would never have been discovered otherwise. Chapter 3. The Obstacle is the Way. Marcus Aurelius captured it succinctly. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not philosophy written in a quiet library. This was written on battlefields and during sleepless nights in tents. It was penned amid plague, treachery, and personal grief. His reign was defined not by comfort, but by chaos. And yet, his spirit remained unbroken. He did not ask for a calm life. He simply sought to respond well to a turbulent one. His strength lay not in removing difficulty, but in retaining virtue within it. He was not removed from reality. He was buried in its storms, and he emerged more rooted for it. This is what makes the line so powerful. It isn't poetic theory, it's lived truth. Marcus was not sitting on a throne, sipping wine, contemplating abstract ideals. He was watching his soldiers die from illness, facing political conspiracies, mourning the loss of friends and family, and trying to hold an empire together. But instead of resisting the obstacles, he absorbed them. He let them shape him. He turned the force of the world against itself. The very thing that aimed to slow him became what refined him. The obstacle didn't break him. It became his training ground. It's the Stoic judo move: to pivot, to adapt, and to use the opposition's weight to fuel your own direction. The Stoics believed that everything, rightly viewed, could become fuel, even the most painful disruptions. Even what others label as tragedy. Everything was a chance to practice virtue. In disruption, they practiced endurance. In insult, patience. In poverty, simplicity. In betrayal, forgiveness. They saw adversity as an invitation to become more, not less. They welcomed misfortune as a drill for the soul. For the Stoic, the world is not a place to be feared. It's a proving ground. Nothing was wasted. Every obstacle was an opportunity in disguise, a forge for strength of character. Even setbacks, properly interpreted, carried instruction. Even the delays were directions. Every time something was denied, the Stoic asked, "Is there another virtue I can bring forward? Another lesson I can master?" They did not waste energy lamenting what should have been. They didn't sit with bitterness or rehash past regrets in endless loops. They didn't spin in helpless circles, asking why things turned out this way or who was to blame. They faced the moment directly. They redirected their energy toward clarity. They asked, "What is my task now? What remains within my control? What step can I take today? What response would reflect who I aspire to become? What would a wise person do next, not just in theory, but in action? If the bridge is out, you build a boat. If the door is locked, you find a window. If the window is sealed, you sit still, breathe deep, and listen for the sound of another opening. If the room collapses entirely, you sit in the rubble, inhale slowly, and begin to sort through the debris, not in panic, but in presence. You do not curse the wreckage, you use it. You do not deny the chaos, you move through it with intention. This is Stoicism, not rigid, but fluid, not passive, but strategic, not clinging to the plan, but loyal to the principle. Adaptation not as surrender, but as disciplined redirection. When expectations fall apart, the Stoic doesn't collapse, they recompose. When the map is torn, they travel by compass, by values, by conscience. When there is no path ahead, they walk anyway, guided by virtue. This is why Stoicism is not about avoiding obstacles, it's about converting them. Obstacles are not interruptions in the path, they are the path. Not through force, but through interpretation, reframing, and perspective. What we call difficulty is often the universe issuing a challenge to rise, to evolve, to demonstrate who we truly are. Pain becomes discipline, a necessary discomfort that sharpens our endurance and clarifies what really matters. Delay becomes patience, teaching us how to endure time with grace rather than frustration. Criticism becomes humility, reminding us that we are always learning, always refining. Fatigue becomes resilience, the quiet, practiced art of showing up even when you're tired, even when the results are not immediate. Uncertainty becomes an exercise in inner trust. It is a chance to stop outsourcing your security and start rooting it within. The unknown becomes a domain where wisdom can emerge, where flexibility is a superpower and curiosity is a compass. It's where faith meets action. Obstacles are not annoyances. They are appointments with potential. They do not merely test your strength, they build it. They become the training ground for who you are becoming, and more importantly, who you are choosing to be in moments of difficulty. The problem isn't the problem. The problem is the test, and the solution isn't comfort, it's character. The real measure is not whether you win or lose, but the depth of your response. Do you meet the moment with virtue? Do you stay composed in the chaos? The virtue you summon in that moment is the proof of your progress. It is your true currency, and it is through these responses, quiet, consistent, intentional, that you build an unshakable foundation, one choice at a time. Identify one problem in your life that feels like a barrier. Reframe it. What skill is it asking you to develop? What virtue is it giving you the opportunity to practice? Write down one action you can take, not despite the problem, but because of it. Chapter 4. Constant change is the rule, not the exception. We fear change because we forget it is the nature of everything. We mistake permanence for peace, and we suffer when reality corrects that illusion. We hold on tightly, and then we wonder why we are torn when the inevitable arrives. But change is not an interruption of life, it is the rhythm of life itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Observe constantly that all things take place by change, and accustom yourself to consider that the nature of the universe loves nothing so much as to change the things which are, and to make new things like them." This wasn't a poetic abstraction for Marcus, it was a principle he lived daily. He ruled during a time of plague, revolt, war, and deep uncertainty. His reflections were not ivory tower musings. They were survival strategies, mental training for the chaos of public life and private sorrow. Change is not the enemy. Resistance to change is. Clinging to the past, pretending that what once was can always be, is what creates tension, frustration, and unnecessary suffering. Life, by its very nature, is movement. It is transition, metamorphosis, adaptation. What was once unbearable becomes background noise. The strange becomes the standard. The new becomes the norm. And then it changes again, again and again. This cycle is not cruelty, it is evolution. It is nature at work. It is the divine law that all things must rise and fall, grow and fade, appear and vanish. The Stoics teach us to cooperate with this process, not resist it. They invite us to move in step with reality, not against it. To anticipate change as part of the human experience, not fear it as a threat to identity or control. Change is not to be defeated. It is to be understood, navigated, and even welcomed. It is the current we must learn to swim in if we hope to find peace. And like skilled swimmers, we must learn to breathe with the tide, not against it. The Stoics remind us, nothing is truly stable, not your job, not your relationships, not even your identity. Everything is in motion. Your routines, your roles, your ambitions, they are all temporary arrangements. Who you are today is not who you were 5 years ago, and that's not a failure, that's growth. It's transformation. And who you will be 5 years from now will again be someone shaped by forces both within and outside your control. This is the nature of life, continual unfolding. Life is not meant to leave us untouched. It is meant to refine us, to mold us, to keep us in motion so that we never grow complacent, never lose the sharp edge of awareness that comes from change. The more we cling to what is passing, the more pain we invite when it passes. The more we try to freeze what must move, the more we feel broken when it breaks. It's not change that wounds us. It's our insistence that things remain unchanged. The more we resist the tide, the more we exhaust ourselves trying to hold still in a river that never stops flowing. We must learn to float with it. The more we fight the tide, the more we drown in it. But the one who surrenders with clarity and wisdom becomes weightless, agile, prepared. So don't build a castle on shifting sand. Build flexibility instead. Build a life that bends without snapping. Build your resilience like a reed that can sway with the storm. Build habits that are tied to values, not external routines. Build your house on principles, not preferences, on discipline, not desires, on courage, not comfort. Let the storms come. Let the world change. Let things fall away. If you have built your inner fortress wisely, on things that cannot be taken from you, then you will remain intact. Because it is those inner anchors, character, integrity, self-awareness, virtue, that make us steady amid the storm of constant change. They do not make life easy. They make life navigable. They do not promise calm seas. They promise that you will have the tools to sail them. List 5 things in your life that have changed in the last year, big or small. Consider shifts in your work, your health, your relationships, your beliefs, your routines. What fell apart? What was born in its place? Now reflect. Did any of these changes truly destroy you, or did they refine you in ways you couldn't see at first? Did they challenge your assumptions or stretch your boundaries? Did they push you to grow emotionally, mentally, or spiritually? Take time to write about what each change revealed. What it took from you, yes, but also what it gave. Did it teach you something about what you can endure, about what matters more than you realized, about who you are when things fall away? Look at these changes not as disruptions, but as recalibrations. Did they shape your values? Did they reveal your resilience? Did they clarify what is no longer worth your energy? Sometimes change looks like destruction, but beneath it, something is being rebuilt. Something quieter, deeper, more aligned with who you're becoming, not who you were trying to preserve. It can be hard to see this in real time. The unraveling often feels like failure, like loss, like senseless chaos. But it is only later, with time and reflection, that we realize what was really happening beneath the surface. A shedding of what no longer fits. A clearing of space that forced us to become more honest, more deliberate, more conscious of our direction. The Stoics invite us to look again, not just at what ended, but what began. What part of your old life had to dissolve so a truer path could be revealed? What illusion was broken that set you free? What shift in identity made room for something more enduring, something that now feels like the truest version of yourself? Sometimes the collapse is a doorway. Sometimes the breakdown is the only way we begin to see what actually matters. Look again at each of those 5 changes. See not just what ended, but what began. See what it taught you about letting go, about trusting the process, about standing calmly in the unknown. See what it awakened in you that ease never could. Chapter 5. The Stoic Response to Chaos. What do you do when the news overwhelms you? When headlines scream? When fear multiplies and every screen, every scroll, every conversation seems to push your nervous system toward panic? The Stoics practiced a kind of selective attention. Epictetus said, "Some things are up to us, others are not." This wasn't a call to indifference, it was a call to focus, a call to sharpen the mind against distraction and root it in the present moment. They believed that inner peace depends on the wise sorting of what we can and cannot influence. It was a skill, not a disposition. They trained their minds the way one trains the body, with effort, repetition, and discipline. In other words, control your controllables. Tune out the noise that does not require your action. Take care of your character, your duties, your focus. Let the rest be what it is. Let others spin in circles over hypotheticals and endless breaking news cycles. You stay anchored, stay centered, stay on course. You do not need to comment on every controversy. You do not need to solve every global problem from your couch. You do need to be useful where you are, to show up, to bring order to your inner world, to protect your attention like a sacred resource. Chaos is loud, Stoicism is quiet, but it is in that intentional quiet that clarity reawakens. While the world shouts for your outrage, your panic, your allegiance to chaos, the Stoic retreats, not into denial, but into deliberate calm. When the world spins, don't spin with it. Anchor yourself in principle, in values, in the work that is directly in front of you, in the simple dignity of a task done well. Take the long view, not just the reactive view. Ask what truly matters, not only today, but over a lifetime. What will endure? What is essential when all else changes? Your peace is precious. Do not auction it off to a news feed or trade it for momentary outrage that robs you of presence. Refuse to give your nervous system away to the tides of trending panic. The world will always shake. The question is, will you? The Stoics were not passive nor detached in a way that disengaged them from life. They were alert, awake, and ready to serve where virtue called them. They did what needed to be done. They showed up for their communities, stood up when the moment required it, and acted with conviction. But they wasted no motion on the wind. They did not allow every headline or rumor to dictate their emotional weather. They focused on the rudder, on steering their mind, their response, their virtue. They didn't chase every wave. They navigated with intention. They conserved energy by choosing what deserved their full attention. And in doing so, they reminded us of a profound truth. Calm is not the absence of the storm, it is the discipline of how you move through it. To navigate life well, you must know what to hold with care and what to release without regret. You must be able to distinguish signal from noise, meaning from motion. This is the art of composure. This is the craft of a clear, examined, purposeful life. Each day this week, end your day by writing down 2 columns, what I controlled and what I didn't. Chapter 6. You are not your circumstances. There is something unchanging within you. The Stoics called it reason, logos, the divine spark. It is the still center around which all the chaos of life may whirl. Your circumstances can shift like sand. Your status, your finances, your relationships, your health. All of these are vulnerable to fortune. But this part of you, your character, your soul, your ability to choose your response, can remain rooted. It is your anchor when the tide rises. It is your compass when all maps are torn. Marcus Aurelius wrote with clarity, "No matter what anyone says or does, my task is to be good." He was not waiting for ideal conditions. He was not making goodness conditional. This was a vow, a standard not set by approval or applause, but by alignment with his deeper self. He was declaring that the world could spin, but he would stay centered. That is the Stoic commitment. To remain a person of virtue no matter the season, no matter the pressure, no matter the disappointment. To hold your form when everything around you tries to reshape you. To stay centered when the world pulls from every direction. To be like the emerald, holding your color, your nature, your clarity, regardless of what others do or say. Even if the world mocks you, misunderstands you, resents you, abandons you, the emerald does not bleach itself to blend in with gravel. It does not dim itself to soothe insecure eyes. It simply remains green, strong, vivid, uncompromised. In the same way, you must remain yourself, even when the crowd cheers for the counterfeit, even when silence feels safer, even when the storm says, "Conform." Life will pull you into its theater, its drama, its storm. It will try to provoke you with noise, to seduce you with applause, to shame you into masks and performances that compromise your principles. It will hand you scripts soaked in fear, anger, and ego, and ask you to speak them as if they are your own. It will tempt you to play roles that feel unnatural, to chase validation over authenticity, to speak louder than truth in order to be heard. It will reward noise and punish nuance. But you do not have to perform on its terms. You are not obligated to the stage. You are not defined by the reaction you generate or the narrative you're assigned. You can stay backstage. You can step off entirely. You can sit in the quiet wings and breathe. You can hold your dignity in silence. You can write your own lines, choose your own tone, set your own tempo. You can craft a life measured not in applause, but in alignment. You can speak slowly while others shout. You can act with grace while others flail. You can choose restraint over performance, presence over presentation. You can remain what you were always meant to be, clear, calm, consistent. Anchored not in the chaos of applause or outcome, but in the stable ground of virtue. You can remain the same even as the spotlight moves elsewhere. You can remain. And when you remain, when you refuse to trade yourself for approval, you become a lighthouse for others lost in the storm. You show that integrity is possible. You show that peace does not come from power, but from principle. You remind the world that wholeness is not performance, it is presence. That true power lies not in domination, but in quiet self-ownership. That it is not reaction, but rootedness that changes the temperature of a room. Write your own personal code of character, not a to-do list or a collection of goals, but a declaration of identity. Who will you be when everything falls apart? Who will you be when no one is watching? Define the values that guide you not just in ease, but under pressure. Not who you want to become if the conditions are ideal, but who you insist on being, regardless of applause or adversity. Let it be a vow that anchors you when the world spins, a compass that recalibrates you when you drift. Not what you want to do, but who you are committed to being, with or without recognition, with or without results. Carve it into your soul, memorize it, live it. Chapter 7. Remember history, reduce panic. The Stoics zoomed out. Marcus Aurelius, in the face of his own immense responsibilities and ongoing crises, would often remind himself of the vastness of time. He reflected on the great empires that had risen and collapsed, on rulers who once commanded nations and were now forgotten names carved in dust. He saw emperors give way to emperors, wars turn into peace, and peace give birth to new conflicts. He saw civilizations flourish and fade, heroes celebrated then forgotten, tragedies that once shook the world now reduced to footnotes. This practice of expanding his mental frame helped him maintain his composure. It was a form of cognitive distancing, a way to shrink the momentary panic down to its proper size. He reminded himself regularly, all things pass, and not just as a philosophical maxim, but as an anchor of sanity. When you feel like the present is apocalyptic, step back, breathe. Pull the camera back from the close-up of your life and place your experience into a wider context. Imagine yourself not as the center of a collapsing world, but as one dot in the long and winding road of human history. Remember that every generation feels its own crisis is final. Every era thinks it is witnessing the end of the world. From ancient plagues to world wars, from economic collapses to natural disasters, humanity has always endured moments that seemed like the unraveling of everything. And yet, time kept moving. Recovery, reinvention, and renewal have always followed. Most of the time, we are simply passing through another difficult chapter, not the final one. And while it may feel like the collapse of everything, in time, most of it becomes background. In time, most of it becomes manageable, even forgettable. And in that realization, we find a strange kind of strength. We suffer most when we think our situation is unique, when we isolate ourselves inside our problems and inflate their magnitude. We sever ourselves from the collective resilience of history. But it rarely is unique. Pain, uncertainty, disruption, these are ancient conditions. They are etched into the bones of every culture, every people, every soul who has lived. Others have walked this path, felt what you are feeling, and emerged wiser, calmer, and more grounded. They remind us that we are part of a lineage of endurance. History is not just a study of events. It is a reminder that we are not alone in our turmoil. It is a chorus of voices across centuries whispering, "You are not the first, and you will not be the last, and you will make it through." And when you recognize this, your pain becomes less isolating. It becomes part of a vast human experience, one that binds rather than separates. Knowing that others endured, that they too cried, doubted and despaired, but still stood tall again, can be a lifeline. It reminds us that the story we are in is not just a tragedy, but a narrative of survival and recovery. It reminds us that courage is often a continuation, not a climax, that just continuing to breathe, to try, to show up in the face of difficulty is a quiet act of rebellion against despair. The Stoic draws strength from these echoes of history, not to diminish their struggle, but to contextualize it, to place it alongside those who came before and proved endurance is possible. Zooming out doesn't make the pain disappear, but it does dissolve its tyranny. It offers us perspective instead of panic, patience instead of urgency, and humility instead of despair. It turns the spotlight from your trembling hands to the horizon ahead. It shows you that though the storm is real, it is not eternal. The Stoic does not deny the weight of the moment, but they hold it within a frame vast enough to keep it from crushing them. They remind themselves of the cycles of history, of the impermanence of intensity, and of the soul's ability to endure more than it believes possible. From this posture they meet chaos not with collapse, but with clarity. Zooming out also lets us see the possibility of meaning, not in a grandiose, cosmic sense, but in the quiet understanding that we are part of something enduring. It opens the door to transformation through witness, seeing your life not in isolation, but as one verse in the long poem of human perseverance. When we reduce our panic through perspective, we reclaim agency. We can stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" We can stop spinning inside our own anxiety and begin grounding ourselves in wisdom earned by generations past. That doesn't make the work easy, but it does make it possible. And that possibility is where the Stoic begins again. Read a brief history of a time more chaotic than yours, a time when cities fell, when plagues swept continents, when empires crumbled and leaders were overthrown. Imagine standing in those moments with no guarantee of survival, no clarity about what would come next. And yet, humanity got through that, not without scars, not without sorrow, but they endured, adapted, rebuilt. Their resilience became our inheritance, their survival, our present. Remind yourself of this deeply. What feels like the end is often only a turning point. What looks like collapse may become the soil for something more enduring. You are part of that same lineage of perseverance. You carry the same ancestral strength. You will get through this too, not by erasing fear, but by walking through it steadily, holding tight to what matters most. Remember, the storm always feels longest while you're in it, but like every storm before, this one too shall pass. Chapter 8. Prepare in peace for the storms of life. Seneca said, "The man who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." The Stoics did not wait for disaster to rehearse their strength. They didn't leave preparation to chance or assume they'd rise to the occasion when hardship appeared. Instead, they practiced adversity in the stillness of their own minds. They deliberately conjured difficulty, not out of morbidity, but out of wisdom. They knew that fear grows in the absence of preparation, so they visualized hardship. They walked themselves through worst-case scenarios. They imagined being stripped of comfort, security, reputation, health, and love, not to summon dread, but to weaken its grip. This was not pessimism, it was armor, it was spiritual training, it was a sharpening of the soul against the blade of uncertainty. Where most people shield their minds from unpleasant possibilities, the Stoic confronted them in advance. They believed that familiarity with difficulty softens its sting, and by exposing themselves mentally to suffering, they were not shocked when it arrived, they were fortified. They called this discipline premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils, not a grim fixation, but a calm rehearsal. Picture losing the job, the relationship, the home, the health, the opportunity. Picture waking up to news that shakes your plans, or watching something you depend on crumble. Then ask, what then? How will I respond? What is within my power? What virtues will I need to summon? Who will I choose to be when nothing goes according to plan? This is not to summon the worst. It is to be ready for it. To recognize that life can change in an instant, and that resilience is not improvised, it is prepared. This mental rehearsal doesn't increase anxiety, it diffuses it. When you've already faced the scenario in your mind, you no longer fear its shadow. You've spoken to it. You've welcomed it as part of the human experience. You've reminded yourself that what truly matters, your character, your choices, your integrity, cannot be taken by external misfortune. And this practice goes beyond just endurance. It's a method for cultivating calm, courage, clarity. When you rehearse adversity, you build inner spaciousness. You loosen the grip of attachment. You learn not to dread loss, but to prepare for it with grace. You begin to trust yourself, not because you expect everything to go right, but because you know you'll still be you, even when everything goes wrong. That is the Stoic shield. Each morning, before stepping into the chaos of the day, visualize one possible disruption, a delay, a rejection, a difficult conversation. Don't catastrophize it, just calmly explore it. Picture yourself responding wisely. Imagine the emotions that might arise and picture yourself breathing through them, choosing clarity over panic. End the visualization by affirming your readiness. Whatever comes today, I will meet it with virtue. This is not fear, it is foresight, and it is strength. Chapter 9. Courage in the face of uncertainty. Uncertainty is not the exception, it is the rule. The belief that we will one day arrive at a stable life, free of surprises, is an illusion that must be outgrown. The Stoics were clear-eyed about this. They didn't ask, "Will things change?" They asked, "What will I do when they do?" For them, courage wasn't the absence of fear. It was moving forward even while fear sat beside you. Epictetus reminded us, "It is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them." And so we must interrogate our assumptions about uncertainty. Is it the enemy, or is it the very context that calls forth our strength? The Stoics saw that courage was not forged in comfort, but called forth by chaos. The unknown is not there to paralyze us. It is there to wake us up. It compels us to think more clearly, to act more deliberately, to live more fully. Every time we step into the unknown with calm purpose, we redefine what we are capable of. When we panic in the face of uncertainty, it is often because we are trying to control what cannot be controlled. But the Stoics knew better. They turned inward. They trained their focus on character, not conditions. They reminded themselves that while the future remains unwritten, the present moment remains theirs. The task in front of them was always the same: to live with virtue, to speak with honesty, to act with discipline, to remain a good person, even when the world seems unclear. It is easy to be brave when the path is marked and the sky is clear, but the Stoic understands that real bravery is tested when the trail disappears and the clouds gather. When nothing is guaranteed, and you still choose to show up with intention. When you are uncertain and yet still move forward. That is the kind of courage the world needs. Write a short note to your future self titled, "When it's uncertain, read this." Include 3 reminders: what remains in your control, what values you refuse to compromise, and what kind of person you are committed to being, no matter what comes. Let it be your anchor when the waters rise. Chapter 10. Keeping your inner temple sacred. At the end of it all, peace is the real prize. Not the return of the other, not the apology, not the changed behavior that never arrives. Peace is found in knowing you honored your limits, protected your values, and chose the harder path of integrity over the easier one of compliance. The Stoics understood that peace is not situational, it is internal. You do not find it by fixing people, you find it by aligning with principle. Every relationship that drains you is a tax on that peace, and if you are constantly paying, you will eventually bankrupt your spirit. You owe yourself peace because you are the only one who can maintain it. You are the steward of your inner temple. Let no one vandalize it with chaos. Let no memory make you reopen doors that were closed with reason. You do not need to justify your distance to those who only drew closer to take more from you. You do not need to explain why your energy is now reserved for those who respect it. Walking away is not weakness. Detachment is not defeat. They are both acts of profound respect for yourself, for the journey, and for what comes next. What comes next, if you stay on this path, is a deeper, quieter, unshakable kind of freedom, the kind that cannot be given, only earned, the kind that glows in solitude and does not beg for company, the kind that doesn't come from control but from letting go. That is the freedom of the Stoic. Not freedom from pain, but freedom from unnecessary suffering. Not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of perspective. List 3 boundaries you must reinforce to protect your inner peace. Then, for each, Write down one sentence you can use, kind but firm, when that boundary is challenged. Memorize them, not to argue, but to preserve your energy.